Hello, this is Ileana and a new episode of Above Time. Until now, we have been discussing about topics that impact our lives daily, our societies, around the topic of social justice. And I've always been asking my guests a call to action towards the end of the episode. And these are all about the things that we can do to make sure that we live in a better society, in a more equal society. But it's us who are acting and who are doing activism and etc. And today we'll be doing something a bit more different, and we'll be focusing on the one step back, basically. So to be able to do all of these things, to be able to build a more equal and better society, how can we make sure that we are able to do those? We have the energy, we have the capacity to do those. And to discuss this, I have my friend Christina with me. She does many things. That's why I don't want to introduce her myself, but we'll give the floor to her to tell us what she does, who she is, and why does she really care about this topic of being good to do good. Christina, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Ileana. My name is Christina Wunder. As you already said, indeed, I'm a person who wears many hats. Just for the fun of it, I'm going to do the opposite of what everybody does, and I'm going to start with my passion and then finish with my profession. It's all intertwined anyway, but I'm an artist and a curator, so I draw, I paint, I write poetry and essays, and then I organize artistic performances with other artists as well, because I want to create and show art that helps us come to terms with the life and world that we have now, and also imagine the kind of life and world that we do want. Then I'm also a community organizer with Idealists Quarterly. So once a quarter, I bring together wedding-sized events, and then in between also other events and experiences, which all have the purpose of having visionary conversations about intersectional justice, so economic, social, climate justice, and again, spurring our collective imagination towards the world that we want to build together. And what I find in this work is that many, if not most, people struggle with the injustices that we've come to normalize as just modern life, and they do want to do something about it. It's just so hard to do it individually. It's not just that it's hard and demotivating, it's just so hard to find the energy even after having full-time jobs, and just everything is so exhausting. And then scrolling on our phones are full-time jobs as well after work, and all of it. They want to do something about it, they don't know how or where to start. And then additionally, a difficulty about it is that any alternatives to the systems that we know are always attacked for being unrealistic, right? So like very quickly people are saying, oh, this is utopian, it's unrealistic, we can't have that because, and then they go into naming all the problems. And that's also one of the most powerful weapons of the current dominant systems, because they have shaped and limited our collective imagination. So my work is about opening that up again a little bit. Then professionally, I'm an impact strategist. So that means I help organizations get very clear on defining their mission and strategy so that they can reverse engineer their path to where they want to go as an organization and what they want to achieve. And this includes helping define solid programs and implementing them, tracking whether it's working the way that it was intended, which we all know that the path to hell is paved with good intentions, but it doesn't always achieve what we want out of it. So that's something that I keep an eye on with my work. Or it could also mean doing team building to ensure that all staff members really understand exactly how their unique talents fit in the bigger picture. And then I also do leadership and self-development coaching, which I personally call purpose coaching, because that again is the goal of all of it. So I help people that want to make a difference in the world to define and pursue their true purpose. And specifically at the moment, I'm doing that with a 9-week group program that is called the Purpose Circle. The next cohort starts in March 2026, and applications to join are now open. So that's a really powerful program that I'm doing with my clients. And why I do it is, well, I've spent the last 15 years chasing and then finding my purpose, which I would now define as cultivating personal and collective power to make the world a better place, which is very abstract, but as you've seen, those are all the different ways that this takes form. And for the past 10 years then specifically, I've been doing endless mindful leadership trainings, shadow work, somatic practices, and so on, in order to align my intentions with my actions, which, as we all know, is much easier said than done. And now I'm sharing these tools that helped me with more people. And then in addition to knowing these tools and practices, I think I'm well placed to do this because I also have a very deep understanding of systems of power, because I've spent my entire career in high power institutions, like in big research by governments, in big kind of spending programs, in politics and big tech and AI and so on. So this understanding of those systems comes in useful when you're trying to change the system, as they say. Though I personally rather view it as building alternative support systems so that we can transition from being entirely reliant and dependent on what we have now, which is very heavily shaped on financial transactions, towards something that is a bit more interdependent on community support. And that's, as you said, is something that we want to get into today, what that can look like.
Absolutely. Well, good that I did not introduce you, because I would have probably missed something.
I struggle with it myself.
Yeah, well, all of us, I think, at this point. Well, I will definitely come to the point on alternatives, like creating alternatives and alternative system. But before that, and it resonates with me a lot when you say, like, people call it unrealistic when you talk about something even slightly different. You don't need to recreate the whole world. People just stop you when you start talking about even a little bit something more different. And this is something I heard many, many times in my life also. Like, people sometimes call me a Pollyanna because I was too optimistic, although I'm a very pessimistic person. But whatever. And you mentioned the purpose circle, which I was part of it in the first cohort. Indeed, it was very interesting and very nice. It is actually sometimes difficult for you to be like, okay, it's on a weekday, and then you go somewhere, and then there are people, and then you need to do something with people after work. But then it became a part of the routine, and then we were all with the others as well. I think I can speak on behalf of them in that sense. We were looking forward to be together. We were looking forward to do things together, to speak together. And I think that was the beauty of what you did. And we can also come back to that later. And one part of it, and at the very beginning of the purpose circle, one thing that we focused was the nervous system and regulating the nervous system. And when we say this, it might be understood that because now it's a very hyped thing that you focus on yourself, your self-work, you do yoga, you do meditation, all good, perfect, fine, absolutely. But it is a very individualist thing that I'm seeing more and more. People are just retracting and they're cocooning in a way, but they're doing it by themselves, while there's lots of us and we live together and we live in a society. So can you go a bit deeper on what we mean regulating nervous system, and how can we do this together?
I think the starting point is that pretty much most of us have a heavily dysregulated nervous system. It takes many different forms for different people, but something that I learned in my life is that overachieving is a trauma response. It is a form of a dysregulated nervous system, and that's something that I've been struggling with my entire life, kind of hyper independence and all of these things. They're also a sign of dysregulation. But basically, the starting point, I'm going to go individually now for just 1 minute, and then I'll switch to the collective. We have two settings in our nervous system. The one is the activating one. You can imagine it like a gas pedal in your car, is the sympathetic nervous system. It's the fight or flight or freeze and fawn, as it expresses in other people. Fight or flight is kind of a quite male way to look at it. And then what has been found is that women tend to more freeze or fawn, meaning tend and befriend is also another way that this is used. So when you're scared, you're looking to build alliances with other people. And I'll go into why that is. It's a very specific difference between the male and the female nervous system, which of course is a spectrum. So non-binary people are also on this spectrum. And for no person is it black or white, but it's just tendencies, right? So, so whenever we receive any input that causes stress, our sympathetic nervous system activates. It means our muscles tense, our heart rate increases, our digestion pauses because we need now to run away from that lion, right? But other things like receiving notifications on your phone or somebody calling your name also activates that. So everything that you react to. And then the second setting is the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest, or rest, repair, digest, which doesn't have a button actually. So the only way to activate that is to stop pushing the sympathetic activation. There are ways to do this a bit more strategically and effectively. For example, doing breathing exercises, doing yoga, doing any kind of calm activity. It could also be going for a walk without your phone or giving somebody a hug. Everything that stops this activation where you have to like perk up and respond somehow. And something that has been misunderstood for a very long time until as recently as like 5-6 years ago, comes as a surprise to nobody who has studied the patriarchy, that all of our knowledge about the nervous system has been tailored around the male body because women's bodies have been perceived as too complicated to study, so let's not bother. And so they've studied the male nervous system, and then they discovered, of course, the fight or flight, the rest and digest, and then the other hormones like dopamine, serotonin, testosterone, and then, of course, from not being able to overlook it, the estrogen, progesterone in the female body. But it has not been studied all that well how it works in the female body. Mm-hmm. What they then discovered recently is that the female nervous system works very differently from the male nervous system. The prime regulator for our nervous system and also for our entire hormonal and physical health is oxytocin, which until that point has been dubbed the love or cuddle hormone, because what they've seen is that men get oxytocin when they are intimate with another person. In our heteronormative society, mostly women. So for them it was like, oh, it's the cuddle hormone, it's the love hormone, it makes people feel good when they're with another person. But what they found looking at the female body is that we need oxytocin to survive. So when we are with other people, so say you and I are together, and there's this, especially in economics, this concept of like the selfish human. Like I'm always looking to maximize my own interest. But that is actually not true for female nervous systems. I cannot be well when you're not well because I sense it and my oxytocin goes down or doesn't replenish. But when you are well and I'm well and we are in healthy relationship with each other, especially as more people come together, I'm just flooded with all the good things that are not even just a luxury, because we're so impoverished in terms of our nervous system health that coming together once a week with a group of 10 people is like a mind-blowing experience. That's also why I love doing the Purpose Circle. But it's so simple and it's so basic. All you need is a framework for trusted people to come together. And then there is another way to even hypercharge that. So when we do any kind of rhythmic activity together, so this could be breathing, singing, dancing, walking, or even marching together, then our bodies sense each other's presence and each other's closeness. And the first thing that happens is that our heartbeats synchronize. So, and it doesn't mean that all our hearts beat at the same time, but there will be, just like in music, there will be one rhythm where all of our hearts beat. And then yours might be a bit faster, mine might be a bit slower, but they synchronize to the same beat ultimately. And then also our brains synchronize. Our neurons are firing electricity and that's our brainwaves, and they also synchronize. So, and then our bodies sense that, and then again we release more oxytocin, more serotonin. It's good for our health and so on. And in fact, even there was a study where loneliness has been studied as a cause of negative health outcomes. For example, people with high blood pressure, when they are close with other people, it is as effective as medication for reducing their blood pressure. So it really has very fundamental effects on our bodies, and we don't have enough of it in our current modern lifestyles.
You mentioned about the female nervous system and that our response is building alliances. And recently, I'm watching currently this show called Pluribus. It's not maybe super relevant, but it's also a little bit. And yesterday I was watching it actually, and then one character was talking about oxytocin and how that was related to how we as humans build empathy. But on one side, so we are building alliances when we feel the risk and etc. And again, there was this observation or study, whatever, on the question of whether we are good or bad as humans. And one example given was that when there is like I don't know, an earthquake, a wildfire, whatever, like a catastrophic event, people tend to help each other. Not all, but mostly, which is something that we are trying to actually discuss here and achieve, that we can support each other. But this happens when something bad happens. And what we need to achieve here, that we need to make this as a routine. This is like in a daily life, that we support each other. But how can we do that then? How can we build a community that supports each other, that is not this individualistic Western society that is trying to race and push and be the first one, or as you said, like to nourish and be the rich, be the wealthy by themselves, but have this idea of communities, which exists in parts of the world. So it's not necessarily that everywhere we are very individualistic, but I feel like it is increasing, because whenever we talk about this topic, I mentioned that I was raised by knowing my neighbors. Not only my neighbors, I knew the whole street, like the whole area. And here today in Brussels, I don't even know who lives in this building. If I have an emergency, I don't know in a close proximity who I can reach out to. So what is the way to build this, and how does our nervous system, regulating our nervous system, play a role in building this kind of community?
First of all, I think it's really not easy in this current context, because you have to first consider that for the last 6,000 years, which in human existence is really not long at all, but of course for our individual existences, that is all the reality we've ever known. Mm-hmm. For the last 3,000 to 6,000 years, we've had patriarchy, which was, when you study that a little bit, you'll see that it's all about separating. So what we do know about pre-patriarchal societies is that, first of all, people had to stick together to survive, right? You don't need a lot of imagination to kind of think, okay, before we had civilizations as we know them, people were in caves, in forests, grouping together to survive. So first of all, that is our starting point as an animal species. So each other's well-being is my well-being. And then what we know of those societies from mythologies and anthropological findings and so on is that spiritual and religious rituals were usually around creating unity, not even just between people, but within ourselves, because we all have very complicated psyches, and we also have what is called shadow parts that we are scared of, that we don't like, that we kind of push away. And religious rituals were around recreating this unity and reconciling the thing that is so hard to grasp, which is the thing that gives life also takes life, right? Even just like Mother Earth births us, but also is very brutal. Like nature is a beautiful thing because we miss it now, but it's also very brutal. So it was all about reconciling this. And then with the rise of the patriarchy, we've had more and more dualism. So we have now opposites that we don't even try to reconcile anymore. So we have us, sinners, the normal people here on earth, and we have God in the sky. That has not always been that way. Mm-hmm. God, and there is elements of that are still here, you know, like even in Christian religion, like God is within us and blah blah blah, but still it's very separate. God is very far away, and he does not concern himself with all of the mess that we're dealing with here. And then that's the other one, the evil versus good, right? So even in all of the movies that we have ever been consuming, there is a good guy and there is a bad guy, and they don't mix and they don't belong together. In other, even to this day, if you watch like any anime or stuff like that, right? It's less black and white. There's this understanding that people can do good and do evil. And it's our job as society to tend to the good and to raise awareness about the risks that you have these tendencies inside you. But I absolutely don't believe that they are set in stone. Like, we do have power over it. I see that also now that I'm raising kids, and I answer 50 million whys every day. It's like, why do we have to share? Why don't we eat all the cookies? Like, of course, like, we're all born with wanting all the cookies and wanting everything, but then it is the jobs of the people around us that raise us to teach us how to live together. And I think that in this day and age, people have not been taught this. We don't have community building as a skill, and I talk about that a lot in my work. And there's this famous quote of like, everybody wants a village, but nobody wants to be a villager. And it might seem that way, but I truly believe that people do want to be villagers. They just don't know how. And because they are so dysregulated, they don't know how to be nice to their neighbors. I struggle with that as well. Like, the WhatsApp group in my building is like, everyone is constantly bitching at each other. It's so hard to have a positive conversation because this Facebook effect of like, and who did this and who put that, and you're like, insults. How do we fix that? Well, I personally am starting with, again, regulating myself so that I don't pile on, because I have this tendency as well. If you come at me, I want to come at you. That's right. But course. So I'm trying not to do that and trying to de-escalate, which again is a skill. And then I choose very concretely, who do I want to be in community with? So as you know, you are one of the people that are in my community, in my inner circle. Then there are people who are not. And I'm very open with, like, everyone kind of gets the chance. And I think that's kind of the way to go forward. I don't cancel anyone or like remove anyone or things like that. I just limit how close they can get to me and my visions as well, because something that I value very deeply is my headspace. So I limit who gets in that even. And when I'm mostly conversing with people who also want to make the world better, then I feel better. And then I am then also more able to be an anchor point for other people. So I think there's a quote as well, I don't remember now who said it, but we're all walking each other home. We're in the dark. We're not sure if we're safe, but we need to get home somehow. We don't even know where home is right now. We could walk alone and be scared in the dark, or we can walk each other home. And I choose the people to walk home with, and I'm careful of the people that I'm like, I wouldn't want to get stuck with these people somewhere. So, and then I try to build very solid structures that allow me to see these people as often as possible. Something that I think many people can relate to is that when you get to your 30s or like late 20s or just anything out of the education system, it gets harder and harder to make friends, because in school we have this mere exposure effect. Every day you're in the same classroom with the same people, and whether they're perfect human beings or not, you end up being friends with them. And there's tons of conflicts, and there's bullying that we need to unlearn, and there's all of that, right? And then we go to university, and then we still have but we have more choice. But then you go to work, and then you're stuck with the Egypts in your office, and that's like, right? Already limits, and then you're there every day from 9 to 5 if you're lucky. More like from 8 to 8 if you're unlucky. And then again, you're friends with those people, and it just limits your choices. And then after work you go home, and your mom and dad are not cooking for you anymore. They're no longer cleaning your house for you. They're no longer filling the fridge for you. So we just get overwhelmed. So I'm building structures to make it easier and supportive for myself. And it's as true for my individual community building as it is for activism. It needs to be supportive. Like when I see you, I leave our interaction more rested. And that's the kind of friendships that I'm really actively choosing to nurture. I don't want to only see friends that will see me when I'm able to go to a restaurant, which means I have a babysitter, I'm using time that I could be sleeping, I'm using money that I could be spending on babysitters to sleep. And for activism, it has to be the same. So if we want to get involved in causes, the causes have to be structured such that it becomes supportive. And we don't have that this much anymore, but we have examples from the 60s and 70s. For example, in the United States, the Black Panther Party had their breakfast program where people would come to eat, and it fills a very specific need for them. And so they come, and then you have conversations about politics basically, but without framing it as politics. Because even there's a book called Mutual Aid by Dean Spade that talks about this extensively. Really highly recommend all of Dean Spade's work. And he's basically talking about how fulfilling people's immediate needs in a mutual self-organized structure gives you then the space to analyze or to build shared analysis about what's wrong with the world. For me, I come home to Germany, where I grew up. I'm from Kazakhstan, so I'm part of the Russian-speaking community in Germany. Everyone I know, everyone I grew up with votes for the far-right party. Even though we've all been harassed and bullied and in some cases beaten up for being foreigners, and now they vote for the foreigner-hating party.
Yeah.
And it's because we don't have a shared analysis. Like, all of the problems that they state, I agree with. It's just the conclusion that we're disconnected from. So I ramble. It doesn't answer your question of like, oh, how do we do it? We have to do everything all at once. And we have to also reconcile like where we want to go, which is utopian and far away and visionary, with where we are now, and see and kind of build also the mental and emotional capacity to hold those. Yes, I want to go there. Yes, I'm here. I don't want to stay here. But if I despair and especially if I separate, if I say, oh, that utopian thing, that's not my life, it cannot be my life because it's unrealistic, then we're screwed. But if we say we want to reconcile, we want to close the gap between what we want and what is, and then we do that individually and collectively.
You said that, okay, so you mentioned this quote, everyone wants a village, but no one wants to be a villager. And you said that you don't believe in that. Well, I am more on the skeptical side towards the human nature, if you're good or bad. I'm not saying one or the other. But to me, it feels like, and it might be because the system pushes us towards that, but it still does. And I feel like some people will not want that. Like some people, and for me, voting for far right is a version of it, because then you're building your community, but then excluding others, like with the, and that's the cost of it. So why do you think that everyone actually wants to be a villager, but they don't know how to do?
So I agree with you. There are people who plain don't want to because they're too far gone, and I don't spend my time convincing them. Just because I've learned that there's no point. And again, cannot stress enough how close this is to me. This is my uncles, my cousins, my former schoolmates, like all of this. I think there is a mix here that I'm also very pessimistic, very, very pessimistic. I'm preparing myself for the apocalypse. If it doesn't come, all the better, but I don't want to be naive, right? And building community is my insurance policy for that. And then there's a mix. I also believe in the fact that two things can be true at the same time. So yes, there are so many people who don't want it, who cannot be trusted. They cannot be trusted with political power, with, right? I would not want to be walked home by them. I don't. But then at the same time, there are many people who do want it. And I just choose that perspective because I've spent many, many years in the negative space. I think it's important to engage with all of this negative. I also believe it's important to grieve what we've lost and sometimes also to grieve forward. My home region in Germany was flooded. I was actually there just the other day because I'm visiting family. There was a lake where there was a village before. People's houses gone. And do you know what people did as a result of that? Voted for far right, who want to just dismantle climate protection and all of that even more. So everything that you're saying, I've been in that space for a few years from 2021. And that's actually where Idealist Quarterly was born, because I was so tired. And actually, loved ones very close to me said, Christina, it's getting hard to be around you. Because any conversation that ever comes up, anyone who ever tries to do anything positive, I come in with my systemic analysis and was like, well, that's bullshit. That won't do anything, because while you're recycling your plastic bottles, they're like creating tons more. While you're trying to get an electric vehicle, people in the Congo are like suffering harshly. And I would always come with these like hard analyses, and it's important to be aware of them. And I spent my time grieving it, and also grieving my own complicity in it, which is another thing that also we don't talk about enough. We all want to be good, but then it's impossible to be good. Even this laptop that we're recording this on is like steeped in blood, right? So how do we deal with that? So there's a concept called active hope by Joanna Macy, whose teachings I follow a lot. And it's basically this understanding, and Greta Thunberg also spoke about that, where she said, hope is not something that just happens to you. It's not, and older people, like all these politicians, always looking to the young people for hope. No, hope is not something that happens to you passively. It's something that you actively create. So in all of this mess, what do we do with it? What do we do with it now, right? Even if, and again, this is all imaginary and theoretical, but it helps me to understand things. Even if tomorrow, like, the apocalypse happens, right? I don't believe in this view. Like, people love saying, oh, humanity won't make it. It won't happen like this. It'll be a dragged out, long process. It'll take years, generations. What do we do with that? Like, will we just lie in a corner and like curl up in a ball? No, I think we will all kick into survival mode, which is a bit counter to the nervous system regulation thing, but we will find a way. And as you said, in catastrophes, people do. It's right now, we have this weird mix of being super comfortable, because we still have all the comforts, the artificial comforts built on global exploitation, and we are losing that. So it triggers people's worst impulses, where in the West, we don't have as many privileges as we used to have in our perception anyway, because things are getting more expensive. Our generation has it worse than our parents' generation, and so on. So there is a very clear understanding that things are in decline. But again, we don't have a shared analysis. So it's like, oh, it's because of this, or it's because of that. And I don't actually engage in those anymore. In a nutshell, I just have found it a necessity to choose what I put my focus on, because otherwise I will just be depressed forever.
Well, absolutely. But yeah, indeed, it's becoming more and more difficult, because we can choose to believe in our analysis, and but you need some certain level of awareness and education to be able to do this. And now there is so much noise coming from the outside, with the news, with that, with this, and creating more and more. I feel like it's more isolated, because people now are in their own little bubble while trying to do their self-work, whatever that means. I'm very also skeptical about that. Like, when it's just individual, it's like people say, I don't read news, I don't know what's happening in the world, because I'm focusing on myself, which is not something that we are talking here. We are not talking about you just become the best of yourself while not knowing anything in the world. But then there are lots of people who don't have the time to analyze things and then to understand and then make their judgment. And indeed, I also think that some are not to be convinced even, because you will spend lots of energy. But then how do we keep the hope? Because I completely believe hope is not coming just from the sky and then you have it and then you're enlightened. But you try to find something to fight for, to move on. You hold on to people around you somehow. I don't know, like, there are lots of ways to do. But then how do we keep the motivation and then the hope in people that want to do good, but then see every single day these horrible, horrible things. And people, for instance, as you said, voting for far right, while those who they voted for are the ones doing wrong to them. How can we keep sane in these kind of times? And this comes again back to community building. And I want to understand how you do it. For instance, maybe you can explain to us what you do with Idealist Quarterly and what kind of feedbacks do you get from that? How do people respond to this?
Yeah. So yeah, again, you're absolutely right. So it's not about, and that's an important distinction. When I speak about I limit who has access to even my brain space and kind of my immediate community, it's not about isolating myself, but rather maybe managing my expectations, right? So I still, and this is very important to me, I still do speak to all of these people that vote far right in my family. I do speak to them. I just don't create conversations that I have learned are doomed to fail and to end in shouting and so on, right? But I think though the first starting point is again rebuilding community for ourselves. And I will be very specific what I mean by that. Very, very specific. Because a friendship group is not a community. So first of all, the people that you're in community with, you don't have to be best friends with each other. You just have to have some sort of shared structure. Shared, it could be shared resources, it could be could be your choir group, it could be the purpose circle, it could be your football team. But I've found in this work, and it's so basic, it's so simple, but something shifts inside of me, inside of the people that I work with. I observe it as well. Something shifts when you see the same people every week. Because you know how, like, and everyone has this issue. Seeing your friend for a coffee or for lunch or for a drink after work, the scheduling, nightmare. And then if you have like any other responsibilities on top, you end up seeing your best friend once a month. And it took so much effort to get there. And then when you hang out, you are not actually connecting, you're catching each other up. It feels like a work meeting. And that is not what community is about. For me, community, it has to be a structure where, first of all, it's easy to get to. You don't have to spend extra cognitive resources. You know, an example that I like to give is that if you want to go to the gym and first you go to work without a gym bag, and then at work you're like, oh, I need to go to the gym, but I'm actually so tired. I'm also hungry. I also need to do laundry. So then you go home, change, go back to the gym. This will never happen. It's too hard. So there needs to be an automatism, right? Every Tuesday or every Thursday, I go to this thing. I'm not even thinking about it. And then I show up. And this is also the important part. You don't just show up to your community meetings when you're in a good mood. That's not what it's for. Because our good moods, they're so rare because life is so hard and stressful and busy and tiring. So I need to have a place to go when I just want to, you know. And what we do very specifically with the Purpose Circle and also with Idealist Quarterly gatherings that I try to do, I take the thinking away from you. That's my service that I'm offering. You don't have to think about how to get your nervous system from dysregulated to regulated, but it happens every single time. Every single person who joins these says, I arrived, I was so stressed, and then by the end of it, I realized that I stopped thinking about the stressful things like over an hour ago. This is the beauty of collective nervous system regulation, because me listening to your problems, it helps me and it helps you and it helps the 10 people sitting around us who also get to partake in this. And then at Idealist Quarterly events, I always ask people to take a couple breaths together. I don't know any events in Brussels where people leave so elated and rested. And also something that people say all the time, like, oh, I was not sure if I would have the energy to come, because also like I'm introverted and whatever. I'm not introverted, so I don't always relate to that experience, but they share with me, I left more energized than when I came, because it's designed for nervous system regulation. So there has to be a structure. And that is what I'm experimenting with as I go. Obviously, I don't have like, oh, here's how you do it, but just anyone, any group of people, it can be one friend, it can be 2 friends, it can be 5 friends, but having one day a week where you get together no matter what is transformative. It sounds so basic, but try it and then message me and see what it did for you. I swear to God that it's gonna be good for you. Just once a week with the same people every week. And then as you start to do that, if you want to do more, look into how oxytocin can benefit groups. Or if you don't want to do that, just sing a song together. Do like a 10-minute breathing exercise or walk. Like there's also a thing, like some people who are not into this stuff, because I'm into it, I've been into it for 10 years, so I've grown comfortable with it. Yeah. But the first times that I did it, it's super embarrassing, it's weird, it makes you uncomfortable. And that's also why it might be helpful to work with a practitioner, like in the way that I do it with my clients, because when you try to do things in a I must or I should brain space, it can actually be even more dysregulating. So people who say, meditation doesn't work for me, it's because the pressure of it is dysregulating them further. So if for people who are in that space, just go for a walk with somebody, but go every week. Like, why was COVID, which is the most horrendous time in our collective recent history, in some ways very healing? Because we had no other choice than to go for walks with somebody every week or sometimes every day, and people have fond memories of it because we are not used to this anymore. And one of the clients in my purpose circle was actually saying that I don't beat myself up anymore about like not managing to do yoga or meditation at home, because compared to doing it in a group, it's such an impoverished experience that that term lives rent free in my head now. Like, it's an impoverished experience. The isolated lives that we lead right now, it's an impoverished experience. So the first and most radical thing that you can do if you want to be an activist is to rebuild community in this way, in a very stable, structured, supportive way. Or meet your friend at chore dates. That's something that you can do. You get FaceTime with another human being and you get something done. Like, I have I don't even know why, I cannot explain it, but I have huge blockages around certain types of admin work. And then when it gets to a really bad place, I text my friends and I say, SOS, I need you to come to my house. I'll give you wine, I'll give you snacks, but please sit there and hold my hand.
No, absolutely. But I understand. Well, I understand. I understand it's so difficult because I'm also guilty of that. I sometimes cancel things, or I sometimes are like, I'm not sure if I can go tonight to this X event or to meet this friend, and saying like, I'm so sorry, I'm sick and I can't come. I understand, and I am a person who really tries to be there and tries to have a community. Even I'm saying even I, because I'm trying to have something, cannot do it. I also understand people cannot do it. And now there is this also, I see it a lot on social media, like people criticizing other people who say, oh, I can't come, and then going in the bed and doing nothing. But it's such a dilemma. Now we are more and more comfortable and we have everything. You don't even need to go out to get food. You can just order it. Everything can come to you. You have your TV, you have your Netflix or whatever, you have everything. So it's very comfortable to do that. But growing up in Istanbul, it's today maybe it's a bit more different because also these communities are also changing, but doing something together, cooking together, preparing the table together, all these things were a thing, and I was looking forward to those times. But then it means that you also need to do something, which maybe we are a bit also one step behind that, because now what we are saying, just be there, go there. Even if you don't do anything, just be there. But then sometimes life happens and you also need to do things. And that's the part becoming villager. Becoming a villager doesn't mean that you just go there and you stand, just sit down and do nothing. But you also need to help each other. And I think that is something that is more and more and more fading away. People don't really want to help each other. It's just too much effort for them. And that I also understand, everyone is so busy and etc. But it becomes like a circle. And I honestly don't have the answer how we can break that circle, because that's what we are talking about since the beginning. We want to build something new, we want to change things slowly, but it takes so much effort.
I have an answer, but you're not gonna like it.
Shoot
And
me.
that answer is that absolutely, you've identified correctly, that first we need to do less. First, we need to do less. And it's hard. It's really difficult because we've been raised, not just us and our generation, but many, many, many generations. For as long as we've had the industrialized nations, for as long as we had feudalist Christianity, for example, we've had this moralistic thing ingrained in us that you must always be productive. And that rest is completely shamed and villainized and weaponized also. So our shame is weaponized against us. We believe that we need to earn our rest, which is not the case. Believe that even, tell me if you relate to this, but in a workplace, to take your lunch, we believe we have to earn it. Like if we didn't get through enough work today, we skip lunch.
Yep.
That is messed up. If we didn't manage to do all the things that were expected of us, we cancel our friend's dinner, or we cancel the going home and freshening up to go to the dinner. So the part that people don't like because it's so scary, because it's also entangled with our material safety. And that's something that we have not spoken about today at all. But how can we be well and regulated when our material conditions are terrible?
Yeah.
And you and I, we are so incredibly privileged, which is why we're able to do meditations. But
No,
if you're
exactly.
working 3 jobs, and that is the life that I come from, you can't do that. So you're only, and maybe that's also why I'm able to find alternatives in this precarious lives that we're all collectively living. I see that, I might not feel comfortable spending all this money on a babysitter and then all this money on the restaurant and drinks and cocktails. And so instead, I'm going to invite my friends to come to my house and we cook together. And that's what I do with Idealist Quarterly events. I have quite a few friends who were saying to me, Christina, why are you hosting these Idealist Quarterly dinners at your house for like 20 people? That's insane. Just bring them to a restaurant and everyone can pay for themselves. And of course they can, but for me it's about the principle of showing that it's possible. And I invited 2 friends who came the night before, and for them it was fun. It happens to be 2 friends who used to work in kitchens, and they do not miss that at all, because apparently being a chef in a restaurant is like a super violent experience. It's like super traumatic. Like they're bullies, they shout at you, they insult each other. It's like not nice at all. But they miss like the chopping 20 onions, and then they were exchanging tips on like how to most efficiently chop like 2 kilo of onions or something, But anyway, so we had loads of fun. And I didn't have to even leave my house because we did it at mine. And then the next day, all of these friends, they didn't have to think. They didn't have to be like, of course, lots of people canceled just because life. These things are fine. Like, don't beat yourself up over canceling. That's, you do have to make sure you don't collapse first. But then people just arrived. Some brought snacks. Most people brought like something to drink or whatever, which is easy to pick up. But they didn't spend any money on restaurants. They didn't have to think about, oh, what will I cook today? They just came for a nice time. And I think that's why, again, I view this as a skill, as a muscle. So now I know that this is possible. So the next Idealist Quarterly dinner, the members' dinner, will be in February. We're hosting it at another member's house, and we will cook again the night before. We'll get together. And of course, for me, it's extra work, for sure. But this is what I view as my role in my community. I just happen to be a hyper extroverted hosting person. I just love it. But all my friends will also know I will probably forget your birthday and message you a week late, I will probably not get you a gift because these are the things that feel so heavy to me. And I try really hard, and I do it sometimes, but I don't do it consistently. But then hosting 20 people in my house, no problem. But here's the thing, you only need one person like me for 20. Yep. Right? And you only need 1 or 2 people who enjoy giving gifts on 20. Because then they'll be like, oh, Iliana was talking about that thing. She really wants it. It's her birthday in 2 weeks. So everybody give me a tenner and I'll buy it and I'll get a card that you can sign. The reason I am disappointing my friends is because I currently don't have a person in my circle that fulfills that role. But we all have different things that we enjoy. And you only need 1 on 20 of each kind for us to have like an abundance of care for each other. But if we all try to be everything to everyone, then we burn ourselves out for sure.
No, that's true. And it's important. I think this part is important, particularly because indeed we are in the privileged position, but some people have to work, 2 jobs, 3 jobs, or simply, let's say they have kids, they don't work, so they're dependent on their financials and also need to take care of the kid, and they also need to take care of the house. And then what do you do with these people? I mean, you can't always ask them, let's go to a restaurant, let's go to a coffee shop and blah, blah, blah. But then I think that's the part where we need to do even a little thing to help to support them. I don't know, hold the kid for 2 minutes or bring some food or just walk out because it's good. And these kind of little things are the ones that we need. And as you said, having these dinners, which is great and people enjoy it, and it's even probably better than a restaurant because you are more in an intimate setting, you're more free, you don't need to care how you sit, how you dress. So I think these are the things that kind of reduces the mental load as well, which I think is an important point to give, because otherwise I never want to sound like this white person who does, goes on a yoga retreat and blah, 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 this kind of things.
On occupied land where the indigenous people are not allowed to enter the beach premises.
Absolutely. I don't even want to start with that. So people are annoyed with this as well, because then you see these influencers on social media and etc. who are doing wellness things that are on the back of the other workers. And it's always important to say it doesn't have to be like this. Wellness doesn't have to mean this kind of stuff, which we can do it at home in our own comfort with very little resources. I think that's a good message to give, I hope.
Yeah, and we can definitely share the mental load, because it's nice how you framed it, because that's how I see my role with Idealist Quarterly and also with the Purpose Circle. I offer to take the mental load off of your plate so you don't have to do it. And in fact, there's a really amazing book by Sophie K. Rosa called Radical Intimacy, where she writes about, many things that I've touched upon are covered extensively in that book. And she says there that we must collectively seize wellness as a common good and reimagine it, because we don't need to go to a spa to have certain things or to go to a yoga class or whatever. And we just need somebody in our community to enjoy organizing it. And then also we can take turns.
But that's a very capitalistic way to think anyways. It's just these yoga retreats or yoga classes. Of course, go if it helps you, but this is not the only way to do it. And because the system likes it, whenever there are these different trends now, it's more what was it, the clean girl thing.
Aesthetic,
and now and I don't know now what it is, but wellness is there as a trend since a while, I would say. And now you have all these very fancy spas more accessible to middle class, or these more yoga retreats, or these and that. So the system gives it to you if you are willing to buy it.
Yeah.
And that's a trap that we should be aware of, because otherwise you are also making people that cannot afford these things more angry, because they also feel excluded by it. I mean, I'm sorry, I cannot pay, I don't know how much to go on a luxury
And
spa.
sweat.
So, exactly. And then we are creating again this like class
Yeah.
division. People are becoming more angry because they are overworked, underpaid, and stressed. And this is what the system shows you, and that's not doing good at all. That's why I'm
Yeah.
a bit like aggressive on these like wellness trends, which maybe I'm a bit too much, but still.
There is an additional dimension to it, though, that we have not covered here. We spoke about it in the preparation, but most of these practices are taken from indigenous communities
Yep.
and commodified, and where it comes from is not even at all quoted or cited or whatever, you know. Like, yoga is a very long and rich philosophical tradition, and the way that it's practiced today is not the way that it was intended. And the same with meditation, which, like yoga, the exercises that you do are to get all the kinks out of your body so you can sit in meditation. So they go together. And breathing exercises, all of these things, or even rituals, is something that we've completely lost touch with in Western industrialized society. But look anywhere, there will always be rituals, which again, for me, it's about collective nervous system regulation, and also the systems that we have, the oppressive systems that we have. The way that I see it, my individual analysis, my personal analysis, is that it has been weaponizing the human nervous system against us. Whenever I describe the purpose circle, people say, oh, but that sounds like church or a cult. It's like, yes, exactly. They do it because it works. And it's the only places where we even do these things anymore. Singing a song together, you know how uncomfortable, I mean, you do know how uncomfortable it is to stand in a group and sing a song together as adults in the 21st century. It is so uncomfortable to our nervous system. It doesn't feel safe. It feels like somebody is going to jump out of the corner and ridicule you, and then you're going to feel shame for the rest of the week if anybody sees you do this. It's so embarrassing. And then we do like one something that I have not done with the purpose circle yet, because I didn't feel people were ready. But take one person and stare each other into the eyes for 10 minutes without looking away. Looking away, okay? It's so hard. It's so uncomfortable. But you cannot look away. And after you do that, you will have a serotonin overflow as if you've taken ecstasy at a party. It works like that. But we don't feel comfortable doing it. Why? Because the culture that we grew up in has villainized and eroded that. You don't do these things. Even in some in religious circles, they're very anti-yoga because you do not want to connect with because you're sinful. How would you or even shadow work is like very villainized, because reintegrate your negative sides into your psyche. No, never. This is like the evil in you. And like I've heard these arguments before, and it's crazy, but it's not by accident, because when we have all this shame inside of us, we are much, much easier to control. Absolutely. But if I know that I tend to get defensive, or I tend to project, or I tend to, do these negative things that I don't like about myself, when I do it, I can see that I'm doing it. And collectively at a societal level, we have that as well. We prefer not to think about homeless people. We prefer not to think about, like now in Belgium alone, until the summer of next year, 103,000 people will lose their unemployment benefits. These are people who have been on them for a prolonged period of time. What are these people going to do?
Yep.
We don't want to see it. We don't want to engage in it. We don't want to reintegrate lost people back into society. We don't want to do that. Why? Because we don't have the, and again, do we not want to, or do we not have the skills and the capacity for it? We could debate that 5 hours more, because of course we would want that, but we're not willing to pay the price collectively, because it would mean taxing.
I absolutely agree with that.
Redistributing
No, that's true. That's true. But that's also like the liberal system. It's their fault that they are poor. It's their fault that they're on the streets. It's I think so evil to me to think like that. And people also believe in that. I genuinely believe that some people would not care about that. Like wouldn't care of people losing their unemployment money, wouldn't care about people on the streets because they'd be like, they chose it.
Yeah,
Or
and
they
again,
didn't work
let's
enough.
unpack that. Let's unpack that though, because again, we have been trained that if you work hard enough, then you will make it. And if you don't make it, it's not that it's your fault then, which is
Yeah.
again an individualization of the problem. But and of course in Europe, it's not, at least not yet, as bad as in places like the US, but
Yeah.
you're only ever one step away from having that yourself, right? Like
Absolutely.
we could lose our jobs. Like now, 2008 was the first time that we've seen layoffs of white collar people. This has been new in our recent history, that it's white collar jobs. Also with climate change, fairly recent that it's white people suffering these things. Now all of our NGO friends are like fearing for their jobs. Like we're no longer able to uphold the illusion that if I just play my cards right and I comply, then I will be safe. Like as Audre Lorde said, your silence will not protect you. And that's why, again, for me, it comes back to community building. If I'm homeless tomorrow, I will have to go somewhere. I will not just like, I will not disappear. I will still be here and I will still have to live life. So I'll come to you. I'll come to all the other people in my community and vice versa.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's the part that I was talking about. It's not only on the good days that you are there together, but being a community means that you're there also when something horrible happens to someone in your community. And that's, yeah. I mean, as I said, growing up in Turkey, it's a community that supports each other. Although there's also bad points of, I mean, you are too intimate and then people are in your business and etc. etc. Which happens, we are humans. But you always know that there will be someone, there will be a support, there will be something that can help you go through these times. And that is something that we need and we are trying to build, hopefully.
Even in places where there is more community, I also grew up in a very large and tight-knit community. My realization to now is that even those lack some skills. So community building or nurturing skills. So for example, giving each other privacy when it's needed. Or resolving conflict in a way. Like every group has their own dynamic and how to deal with conflict. Some have like a massive explosion and then after everything calms down, others brush it under the carpet and then they kind of can go on. These are all coping mechanisms. They're not good or bad, but there are always ways to refine them. And I read in Radical Intimacy also about a community in Burkina Faso. I don't remember what they're called now, but they have a weekly grieving ritual that is super taboo to miss. You like if you miss it, then like that's a crime against the community. And in this grieving ritual, everyone gets to vent and voice their issues. And imagine if somebody did you wrong and they have to sit through the discomfort of having done that, and then you get to cry about it or you get to like be angry for a bit, and then you get closure also, because if these things that are going bad are not witnessed and remedied, then they just grow like a cancer. So these are also forms of community maintenance that we don't have anymore, because when somebody has very heightened feelings where we get nervous, we want to make it better immediately, but there's nothing to make better about somebody feeling grief. You just have to be there for them. And when people have this, then they are really, why do people pay, which is again an individualization of this very human need. Why do people pay individual therapists? Just so they can say these things out loud and have another person witness it. And then ask them, and how does it make you feel? And what would you want to say to that person? And like, what are you going to do now? All of these things. You don't need to be a licensed therapist to ask somebody these questions and to witness them, but you do need the skills of not jumping in to fix it immediately, not wanting to minimize the harm done. These are all skills that, again, we need to build. And again, this is what my work is about, to rediscover all of these skills and then bring it to more and more people, because these skills exist, people do them, they just don't live in our Western industrialized bubble. Even if they do live in the West, then they have the knowledge from somewhere and they apply it. So that's kind of my mission, to learn from them and then to apply it in my consulting and coaching.
Yeah, no, but I feel like everything has become a job at this point. And then when you have these outsourcing opportunities, because before that you had midwives in your village, in your whatever, you had people who listened to you, you had people who did the other things, you had people who were mediator. These were people, I mean, we did not have these jobs before. These were done by normal people without the education. Of course, I mean, we are not saying that education is bad or we should not have these, and etc., etc. These are all needed, but we kind of made these, like, outsourced these skills. So we don't need them anymore. Like, we don't need people to have these skills, because you can just go and find one on the internet. And like with therapy, for instance, as you said, you can just connect it on your app and it's easy like that. You don't need to even talk to your friends about it. And yeah, well, it's not good or bad. It's just, that's what it is.
No, I think it's pretty bad. I think it's pretty, that's why, like,
I didn't want to take...
In a way, that's why in the work that I do, I try to teach people the skill themselves. So in an ideal world, you do that for a while and then you don't need to pay someone else for it anymore. It's just that, I mean, it's just that when you don't have a skill, I think it's good to get help. And I went to therapy for a good while as well, and I sometimes still go back when I feel like I need it. But I viewed it kind of as me learning that skill. Like, these are all skills that can be learned. I learned a lot of these skills myself. Obviously, I'm not perfect. I have like a huge pile of shit to work through, but I have come quite a long way, and I'm no longer... Like, yes, I'm paying certain people who have more skills than me on certain things, like shadow work, somatic practices, nervous system regulation, just so I can get better in then teaching that same skill to other people. But the idea is that you don't need to pay me anymore after a while, when you feel ready, or you reduce the frequency and you only come back when you want to refresh or something like that.
And I see that the time is moving, so I would like to slowly come to the conclusion. And well, in the prep call, we discussed a lot of things, and obviously we did not manage to cover all of them. So I want to ask you if there is one thing that you really wanted to talk about, that you believe it's important.
I will just end with maybe 2 invitations that are like calls to action. One is very practical. Think about which friend or friends you can see every week. I know it's such a big ask, but even just start thinking about it, how to make it happen, and try to have a structure where you see the same people every week. And then see what you want to do together. You could even clean each other, like not clean each other's houses, but like go to each other when they do laundry. And then next week you come to mine while I do laundry. It could be anything. And then the other is to try and learn about indigenous knowledge systems, because so many of the answers of the issues that we have are there. They're hidden there, because it is, like I said earlier, it is very recent that us privileged white presenting people have these issues. And I have part indigenous roots myself, but because of imperialism, I don't have a lot of knowledge about it. I don't know how my people used to live before they were occupied. And from what I've learned about indigenous communities in the Americas, in Asia and lots of different places, there's so many overlap. And that is because they are designed for our human nature. If you want to look for something like Braiding Sweet Grass is a great book to start with by Robin Wall Kimmerer. She's a scientist trained in like the Western system, but also is Native American. And because she's mixed, she combines those two worlds and really explains it in a way that is accessible to us. And I found so much support in this. And then once you open that door, you'll want to keep going, I'm pretty sure.
No, absolutely. There is so much knowledge and so much rituals that are either repurposed or became like a part of the capitalism that we can benefit. And indeed, there are lots of overlaps because we are all like coming from the same consciousness and finding the same things more or less around the same times or with a little bit of delay and etc. So that's a good call to action, and love to have the call to actions always. And with that, thank you so much, Christina. I'm so happy that we had this episode. I will put all the information about what you do and also the references when I publish the episode. And I suggest the listeners to follow Christina, to follow Idealist Quarterly. And as one of the first participants of the Purpose Circle, I absolutely recommend it. Thank you so much again.
That's great to hear. Thank you. And next Idealist Quarterly event is on the 21st of January. So get your ticket and see us there to see it for yourself if you haven't been yet.
Yes, absolutely. I'll be there also. Well, amazing. Thank you to the listeners and see you next time.